Now then, enough of you have asked about CV settings and DCC and block detection and how I get the trains programmed to stop in the right place and how I run a sequence. We're not going to cover all that in one go. That would really be a cure for insomnia, now wouldn't it? I intend to look at a couple of CV value settings and just to explain how I'm getting the trains to stop in the right place without magic. Well, it is magic. Come on, let's have a look. I'm not plugging the computer into a computer and capturing screen settings and all that stuff. This is the general view of Train Controller. Some of the locos are listed there. Some of them I've taken out simply because it's hard to find. The basic layout is there, and there are some controls over here. I'm going to put this thing into programming mode and try and do this with my left hand. I'm holding the camera handheld, and I'm just going to pull up, let's pull up a station block, that one there. And it will pop up on the screen. And what we get is a number of things that we can set. For example, the maximum speed through the block is 70 miles an hour. This is through a station. That would be fun, wouldn't it? Restricted speed of 30 miles an hour. In reality, what that means is if the block in front of it has something in it, then the train will slow down to this speed in it. Or if there's a red light ahead or something like that. You give them a nominal name. And then the block editor, let's click over to that. Do you see the lovely patterning I get if I get the camera at the wrong distance? I really should screenshot it for you. That's the block. Trains coming in from that end. There are two numbers here, in this instance, 23 and 55. That's the distance I want it to travel before the train stops or before there is a stop point. The ramp for it to do that is 23 inches long. You set the length of the block and that's all set in real measurement values. I'm just going to click on this one here and it opens up another thing. In this instance, I want the middle of the train, I didn't know I did, but the middle of the train to be detected. So the locomotive will come in and it won't just start slowing down and stop there. The middle of the train will go all the way to, it'll go all the way to there, and the middle of the train will set there. Now, the reason that's important is that it's a platform. And the same thing on this one, again, set to middle of the train. I'll talk to you about that in just a second. So one of these so the overall block I've already set as a length. How long is it? That's buried in there somewhere. The distance from the time the block is detecting a train to where the stop would be is that many inches. It's 55 from each end. So this block is the platform itself, and we want the ramp to be about 23 inches. So once it starts, it's going to slow down over that time. This time I've picked block 5. It's on the main line. I could have picked any one of these. That red dot there simply means trains can't come into that block from that end. Now this block is out on the main line. It's quite a long block, and so there is a ramp on one end, so the train's going to slow down. The other end is just going to stop, and it's going to do that at 36 or 38 inches. But this time it's set to head of train, I think, isn't it? Or should be. Yeah, the head, oh, that's the middle of the train. That's interesting. That's head of train. I'm going to change that now to head of train. There we are. The why behind that what, I'll show you. So this is that block. It actually starts there and runs around, I don't know where it ends, somewhere around here. Ends at that point. That might be why I did it. We'll have to have a look at that again in a minute. Don't mess with things without realizing what you're doing, Ian. I'll change that setting back. Let me try and illustrate what that's about. Train comes into the block. The moment it crosses that gap, It's detected by the block detector and runs in and starts to slow down. Now, if we have the head of the train detecting and stopping, what would happen is the moment the train gets to there, it's going to stop, or it's going to go that 23 inches, so that's around here somewhere, and stop. Now, the whole rest of the train is sitting across that junction. We don't want that. We want the train to get out of the way. So often I use head of train. Where there is a junction, I'll use tail of train, and through platforms, the center of the train. Now, how does it know the center? We could go down a rabbit hole, couldn't we? The reason train controller knows is because I tell it. I tell it how long the train is, or how long the locomotive is. Yeah, and so then what are you going to do? Every time you couple up a locomotive, you've got to reprogram the computer. That'd be silly, wouldn't it? Couple of things there. Let's look at an actual train or two. Here's one: locomotive, wagon, guards van. Now the guards van is detected because it has a resistor and a couple of contacts in the bottom. You might remember I installed a tail light on that one. But that wagon has nothing, and neither does this one. And most of the coaching stock doesn't. So if I were to leave that there now and go and look at the computer will not know that's there. Metal wheels, I could and should solder a resistor onto that so that the computer knows where it is. That becomes a real issue when you are pushing trains. So for example, if we have a 4-carriage train coming into one of these platforms, let's say this one, the locomotive comes in, runs in and stops there with the 4 carriages here. Lovely. But if it's pushing and the carriages come in first and there's no detection on them, the computer doesn't know that there's a train there. So it just keeps going until the locomotive runs over that joint and then pushes as if it's got 4 carriages behind it, and you end up with a big pile of carriages up over there somewhere. So all of those things are considerations. Easy solution: all the rolling stock needs to have resistors added. I haven't done it. So several ways around that. I sometimes tell, with night mail, for example, I tell the computer that the locomotive is that long. So I've got a 4-foot long locomotive. Or you just tell it that the stop point is further on than it normally would be, so that it stops roughly in the same place each time. The reason it's a thing is I've got some EMUs. Problem with them is they don't all have their pickups in the same place. This one, for example, only has pickups there, not here. So if it comes in the other way around, it's going to stop a full carriage length this way. At least it's this way and not that way. So there's a lot, you see all the complications you end up with just because resistors aren't fitted and so on. Now, solutions. How do you make it work? Not what are the problems? Well, the first thing, I've said this before, not everything has to run everywhere. No. For years, the Gronk had never driven through the platforms. It had only driven on this platform, not on the others. And it was only when I ran it through the platforms, when I bought a few extra wagons and I ran it that way one day, that it clonked. You might remember Gronk Clonk, I believe was the name of the video. And so we had to widen all the platform tolerances or re-gauge the edge of the platform just so the Gronk could get through there. So there are a number of lines that, for example, the Class 20 can go to, but the Class 40 cannot. So that's one of the ways. What on earth are the EMUs doing going to all the platforms in the big station when 2 of those platforms go off around the incline, and you really don't want those EMUs up there? So some of the platforms will eventually end up with third rail, some will not. Let's talk about the bay platform. It really used to only be 2 carriages long. I've added a bit of platform, you might remember that. But very few trains are allowed to go there unless I'm driving. So the computer can't choose to send most trains there. Let me show you that. So on the block editor, there are trains. There's all the trains listed. Only 4 of them, it seems: the Dover luggage van, the blue-grey sardine, the rail car, and the blue sardine. I call these sardines because we used to call those sardine specials when we only got a 2-carriage train to go to school instead of 8 or 4. So we all crammed into those and we called them sardine specials. So that's why that name. It's very easy to add another train. I used to have the 264 tank over there, but right now it's pulling 4 carriages, so I just took it out. I don't see the class 20s down further. It used to be on there, but since it's now pulling that lovely rake of London Underground or London Transport carriages, or the 4-car set, we don't want that ending up in there with those. And so they're the only 4 right now that are allowed in there. So then there are a number of factors that will determine where that train is going to stop in the platform. So I've run it into this platform here. I'm not worried about where it's going. Stopped a bit abruptly, but it has stopped in the middle of the platform. And the reason it's done that is because that's what it would do in real life. In real life, it might stop a little further that way, but that's one of the compromises. So it's stopped there because I've asked on it to stop in the middle of the section or something. Let's have a look and check, see what I have actually told it. Now then, that particular train, if it came in the other way round, would go a full carriage length further. Do you see there is a full carriage length more space? We're not going to demonstrate that right now. Well, why don't we? Come on. Why don't we? Because we've got every path to the reversing loop so stuffed up, I'd have to pick the train up and turn it round. So pick it up and turn it round, Ian. Well, I'm wrong. It came in a carriage length this way. Yes. This isn't the one. You remember it stopped abruptly? I've bought this one over here. It's the blue-grey one that would have done that. This one is here for programming. We'll talk about that while we're here. This is my programming track. Now, if you just saw the fiddle and faff I had picking that up and turning it around, yeah, we're not doing that. So my programming track is actually a siding. You see it runs from there to the other end of the platform. Imagine trying to pick up the London Underground set with that horrible fiddly coupling it has and placing it on the programming track, or any of the 4 EMU units. That would be a nightmare. So what I do to program is I drive the train in, program, and then leave it alone. So since the blue one is over there, let's do that with that one. So here comes the blue sardine special, and it's going into the programming track, and it will stop abruptly like that. I'm going to put a kiosk. Those of you who know me by now know what the kiosk is for. It simply marks, if you ever see one of these on the layout, it's marking the front of a train. And what I'm going to do is change a CV value. Shock, horror, no! So the first thing is, underneath the layout there is a switch. It says run or program. Flick the switch to program, and what that's doing is disconnecting this wire and that wire from the main lines and shoving them into the program track terminals. So now that's my programming track. There's no possibility of those joining up. The only thing you have to watch is that a train isn't hanging over it. So the underground trains have a chip on either end, And so if you had one sticking out and one sticking in, it would really mess you up. But you just drive them all the way in or sufficiently far in. So there we are. So that's, if you wanted to be super safe, you could have another couple of terminals that created a blank section. But that's never given me trouble. So there we are. So the blue train is now in there. I'm going to change a CV and we'll see what happens. Pen and paper. What I'm going to do is write down what the CV value currently is. I'm going to show you how to do this. All right, so here's my Digitrax controller. I could do this on the computer, but let's do it on the controller. Most people don't have train controller, and so if I were to start getting into all of that, it would get really interesting, wouldn't it? I always do the programming using this in any case. So the first thing we're going to do is get into the programming mode. We're going to go to CV programming, which is 2, press 2. It's physically on the programming track, so we're going to press 4. And then CV1. Now CV1 is the address. All I'm going to do is press B here, the CV data, and read, and it's telling me it's 30. Well, there you are. That's the number of that train. It's number 30. So I'm writing that down. 1 equals 30. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is go back and find CV number 2. And I'm going to read that. Aha, CV2 equals 0. I'm just going to go through them and we're going to go back before we do anything. CV number 3 is 15. And then we're going to go to 4. Is 2. These are the results of the chip that's inside that 2-car set. I haven't done anything yet other than write down the values. The values I've chosen to look at are CV or control variables for the chip that's inside that have been set or are set. I think the only one I've actually changed is this. That's the address of that unit. Now, why is it called 30? I haven't got the first idea. There must be a reason. Let me look. Can't see any reason. There's no 30 on it. Wonder if there's a 30 on the back. Let me look. Nope. Looks like Ian has picked a number at random. 30. Lovely. Well, for whatever reason, it's number 30. Number 2 is the start speed. This is Sam's train's always on about, oh, lovely crawl. This is the speed at which your train can crawl. It can't crawl at 0, so that needs to be increased. So that's just if I turn it up the lowest notch, what speed is it going to start moving? Can't be 0. It is, so that's silly. Number 3 is acceleration. Now, I didn't notice anything bad about the way it was accelerating, so we're not going to mess with that. 4, I'm going to come back to. That's deceleration, and that's one of the things I do use. 5, this seems a bit low. That's the maximum speed that train can go. Now, it's chugging away rather slowly, so we will increase that. Number 6 is the midpoint. Well, this is the slowest point. This is number 2, and that's 0. And the maximum speed is number 6. So midway can't really be 1. It could. It's not really the halfway point. What it is the a really heavy goods train, for example, you would have a low number there, so that the locomotive is and it's getting up to speed very slowly. And then when it gets there, from there to maximum speed is much easier. So that should be much higher than that relative to those figures. Number 7, I always look at it. It's just a version number for the particular chip that's in there. Number 8, if you get completely messed up, you screw everything up, you go to CV8 and enter 8. And if you put 8 in there and say enter, all of these things go back to factory settings. Number 29, CV29 is a complicated one. It's all sorts of things. There are special speed profiles. There are the kind of speed steps you want to have. But here's a little trick. If it's an even number, and that is, if you were to add 1, it's going to go the other direction. So it's going to go backwards. So it's going to think the front is the back. Right now, the far end of that train has got the locomotive in it, or the motor in it. It's way down there. And it's going, when the controller says forward, it's going that way. If that weren't the case, you add 1 to this. You make it 7 instead of 6. So yeah, and if it says 7, and you want to go the other way, you make it an even number. So if it's an odd number, you take 1 off. If it's an even number, you add 1 on. So you add all mine. I'll say it one more time. If it's an even number and you want it to change direction, add 1 to that number. If it's an odd number and you want it to change direction, you take 1 off. So that's really the rest of it. There are settings, they would be much more advanced. So now what are we going to do? Let me talk about them as we go down through these. The first thing, the address. Why is that called 30? I haven't got the first idea. I do have a good reason why that is called 68, because that's 68 stock. I've only got 1 of them. There's a 1960 stock and there's a 1938 stock. So guess what numbers those are? Hiding under there's a class 20. I've only got 1 of those, so it's 20. You might remember we had all kinds of trouble with this one. I couldn't find what the address was. It should be 8, shouldn't it? But something else had 8. Nobody thinks they're ever going to have that many locomotives. I sometimes use head codes. Do you see there's a 92 on this one? That, I believe, is what turns the lights on. There's a different number on the other end, I do remember. That was problematic. There's a 90 somewhere. Ah, yes, I've just remembered why it was we had those numbers. I started off with the first locomotive I chipped was the Battle of Britain spam can. Then a rail car was number 2. 3 you can't use because all the chips start that way. And then I just went off down the list until I got down here, and the last one on there was a reason for jumping some of the numbers. 30 was the sardine, the EMU 2 car blue. So I've got a card that is woefully out of date. I said that about 6 months ago. I need to reprint these, but I have cards like this, and these things are all over the layout. Just a piece of stick card printed up. Not even half the locomotives or sets are on there. The number 7 doesn't run anymore, for example. Yes. So, write stuff down. What are we going to change these CV values to then? I'll come back to that in just a minute. Oh, it was getting interesting. You're going to sleep, I know about you. Now, you might remember that we've set up the blocks and the underground trains just from a couple of days ago. The underground trains are coming in nicely and working through a sequence, coming in on each of the platforms and stopping in the right place. That was done not by changing the blocks. That was done by changing the CV values. Why didn't I change the blocks? Because in theory, the EMUs already do work on those platforms. I found one today that didn't, but that's another whole thing. So don't mess with the blocks because it works on all the other trains. So now how do you get the train to stop in the right place? Once the train goes past this section here, there are several factors that will determine where it stops. The first is, what did you tell the computer that train was? How heavy is it? How fast can it go? All of those things. What's its length? And have you asked the head of the train to go all the way to the end, or what have you told that computer the train actually is? Your maximum speed is going to change it too. If it's coming in at the crawl and the deceleration is set really quite low, then at a crawl it's going to stop quite quickly. But if it's coming in really fast, it's going to go drifting on much further. Lots of variables there. Usually, I would say we're going to change one parameter at a time and in order. But there are a couple of key things to remember. If you are messing about with acceleration and deceleration and then you go to maximum speed, let's say you've got this thing taking 30 seconds to get up to maximum speed, you can't really, it's going to take all day to set it. So set your maximum speed first. So that would be CV6. Set that one before you set 3 and 4, your acceleration and deceleration. Because if you do it the other way around, it's just going to take forever. Now, looking at our list, what would I, at a educated guess, I always put now and then at the top. That's just me. So 30 is the address. That's not going to change. But have a system. I didn't. Nobody thinks they're going to end up with 30 locomotives all in the same. I did. I got loads of them. So now what am I going to do? The start speed, that needs to go up. Acceleration, I'm not going to mess with that. Deceleration, I am going to mess with that. I'm going to increase that to 4. Once it's told to stop, it's got a value of 2 right now. So from the point it's told to stop, it's taking 2 to stop. And that's rather abrupt. Now these values, you can't just transfer them from one to another. So with the 3 underground units, all identical, all with the same motors, the same chips, I looked, same chipset. One of them drifts on twice as far as the others with the same values. So yeah. I'm going to add a little bit of drift on to that, and the way by changing the deceleration, we can have the train drift into the platform more evenly. Maximum speed, I'm going to take that up a bit. Midpoint, and take that up a bit. Not going to mess with 7. I don't think you can. Certainly not going to mess with 8. I don't want to reset everything. And CV29, it's just good to know. I have a hunch that the speed step thing isn't right because of that. So I could have a look, but we're not going to mess with that today. So let me just change those. I didn't show you each step, but basically your controller get the data. So where are we? Let's pick a CV number, and we'll pick 2. And read, it's now 1 instead of 0. And if I wanted to change it to something else, you push the value and write. So I've gone through all of the CVs that are important to us right now. That thing has been programmed. Let's see what I did. So I'm reaching under the board, flicking the switch, and had the lights been ready, they would have come on. They must not have been on. And that is now ready on the main again. Now, I know some of you are very nervous about having program tracks attached to the main line like that. I've never had a problem with it, and it's certainly easier when you're running those great long multiple units. I don't pick them up. Now let's see what it does this time. see where it's gone this time? There's the old stopping point and there's the new stopping point. Now, I'm not thrilled with that because I think it's going to do a bump if it comes over here. Let's give it a try. Now, the running speed I'm happy with. There's something going on that track. It's on a restricted speed. Let's see what it does here. I've got my hand in the way just in case. Nope, that's perfect. So there we go. We have, I will leave it at that. It's still a little abrupt, but you see how now we're coming all the way in there. We're now going to move it back over to that side just to make sure. Now the acceleration is fine. There's only one block left in front of it before the stop. And that's part of the train controller programming, that it's being restricted to its lower speeds when it comes in that fashion. And this time it's left a little bit more of a gap. So I'm going to run that a couple of times just to make sure we're not doing silly. Now it is consistently landing there. I've run it 3 or 4 times. Every now and again it stops a little short. Not sure what that's about. Maybe, I don't know, a bit of dirt on the track or something. But that's very consistently landing there. We'll pop it one more time into the track behind. I'm setting you up so that you can see the acceleration. In general, I'm happy with that. As a very quick first go. Now we can mess about with that all day, but can you see a couple of the parameters you have to worry about there? I'm limited certainly on that track. I don't want to change anything about that block. I probably could on this, but because there's only 4 trains involved. But just by changing the deceleration, we've got it running in basically another 6 or 8 inches, and it getting much closer to the buffers in the bay platform. So there's just a very quick rundown of CV values. They really aren't anything to be afraid of. Some people ask me, why'd you bother? Well, you can just turn the controls slower. Yeah, you can if you're driving your trains yourself. But if you just whip the control around, remember that train's going to take off like a scolded cat. And you've got to remember which train you're driving. But when the computer takes over, now a whole other set of criteria kicks in. Couple of other things to consider if you're going to run 2 trains together. They call it a consist here. In England, we call it double heading. If you're going to do that, I don't generally. But if you do, you then have to have the locomotives relatively matched. Oh, it never works. Yes, it does. All of the underground trains are basically two-car trains joined together. They would run individually. Yes, and we've talked at length about that, haven't we? Well, I hope you enjoyed that. It's a little bit of train running. I hope you enjoyed seeing what the CVs do to some extent and how they can change where the train stops. So why don't I just have another sensor? Somebody suggested that's actually a good idea. So when it gets to this sensor, stop. What you would then be doing would be adding another track block detection. So you would have an absolute, you're going to stop when you get there. Adding a block detection section is expensive. Each block costs money. Theme of this channel, make do with what you got, mostly. Well, that's it for another one. It should be another video up here. I don't know what it is. You have to tell me what appears up there. It'd be interesting to know. And subscribe if you would. Do me a favor. Tell your friends about this channel. I am not publicizing the channel to all the model railway groups and so on. But if you want to do that, it would help the channel. Thanks now. See you tomorrow.